Welkom terug bij de uitzending vanaf de Media Future Week. En aan tafel is aangeschoven, u hebt er waarschijnlijk al herkend, Marian Salzman. She lived a couple of years in Amsterdam as well. It's quite a while ago, I think, in the meantime.
It actually was quite a while ago. I think I've been out of Holland officially for since 1997,
Uh-huh.
but I've certainly been back here a lot, although less probably in the last 2 or 3 years than before that.
Ah, okay. So, but now you flew in, especially
I
for
did fly in.
well, thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
Media Future Week. Students surrounding us in 10 groups concurring with the challenge. And we got to speak a little soft because they're actually really working. This afternoon, you will have a talk for them to inspire them, I presume, or share some thoughts.
I suppose I will probably inspire them a bit, maybe scare them a bit.
That's good, yeah, to get some action.
Probably make them see the world a little bit differently. I think one of the things that you have to do when you're thinking about the future and about future scenarios for businesses is to disrupt the convention.
Yeah.
I mean, in the advertising world, we always say that, if you assume that when you turn the faucet on, water's going to come out, what would happen if orange juice is what
Hmm.
came out first?
Yeah.
It's the
It's
same thing.
confusing, eh?
It's the same thing in an internet world. I mean, why in the world do we wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night? Why
Yeah,
don't
on the
we?
ancient times, you mean?
Even
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah.
but this morning, this began in the morning and it ends in the evening. It begins tomorrow morning, ends in the evening. It's completely ironic because the most interesting internet activity happens in the evening and ends in the morning.
Yeah.
So if you're really looking to harvest
Hmm.
internet opportunity, you need to fish where there are fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a nice example last Friday. We had the TEDx Brainport here in the Netherlands, starting at 7 o'clock in the evening until 4 o'clock in the morning, because it was worldwide mode interesting on the web to share the thoughts with everyone. What kind of major shifts are you aware of for, well, let's say 5 or 7, 8 years to come?
Well, I mean, I think there is going to be a lot of discord. Many of the world's current superpowers are
Yeah.
aging, and brand new superpowers are developing. For one thing, India is going to outpace China.
Yeah, yeah.
So India is going to become the biggest country in the very, very near future, the next couple of years. But countries like Yemen, which have had massive population growth, are going to outpace countries like Germany and France. So
Hmm.
suddenly Yemen, the hotbed of terrorist activity, is going to be a bigger
Yeah,
country than most of our European Union, super citizens.
yeah.
And we have really no expectations of what a world's going to look like when the them is going to be much bigger and more vibrant in terms of fertility than us.
Hmm.
I mean, a whole other trend I see is we're going to really begin to tackle the question is what are cell phones doing to our bodies? What are they doing to our brains? And what are they
Okay.
doing to our fertility?
Yeah.
And what are they doing to perhaps the synapses that cause ADD, attention deficit
Yeah.
disorder? I think that there'll be lots of questions asked about, are we microwaving our brains every time we put it on
Hmm.
our heads? Are men zapping their likelihood to father a child every time they load them into their pockets? So I would argue that cell phones may be the new tobacco. And we're going to see a lot of scrutiny around.
So after 10, 15 years, we have the same trials and stuff like that. As
I don't know if it's going to be 10 or 15 years because I think we've actually
faster, yeah.
seen the rumblings of
Yeah.
this for the last 3 or 4 years. But just like the tobacco lobby kept that
Yeah,
conversation
of
very
course.
quiet
Yeah.
for many, many years, I feel like it's on the brink of exploding. You're starting to see large, powerful universities tackle it as an academic question now. But
Hmm.
you're also seeing in the northern countries where they're very, very dependent on
Yeah.
revenue from cell phones. Think about Finland, for
Yeah, of
example.
course.
Think about Sweden, for example. A big pushback, but my guess is that the 10-year studies are starting to reveal no information.
Hmm.
What happens when we do 15-year studies? What happens when we start to study what happens to children under
Yeah.
the age of 14 who've been using them?
Hmm.
We certainly know that brain cancer is on the rise, and we certainly know that certain locations that are very consistent with the location of how
Yeah.
people hold
Yeah.
their phones.
Hmm.
So I think that's going to be another very interesting one that has a lot of questions about then how do we consume media?
Yeah.
Because we've moved over
Absolutely.
towards a mobile world. The phone has become the chosen device, particularly in the emerging markets where there's not money for computers.
Yeah. So just mobile devices, whatever, a phone or something
Well,
alike.
whatever it's particularly true as it relates to voice because voice is going close to the head and voice has been going into the pocket.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's going to be a big question mark. So I think that's going to be a controversy in the making.
Hmm.
Um, Another trend I see is the end of America as a superpower and the
I'm
replacement of the
afraid so. Yeah.
replacement of the internet as that superpower. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, it's easy to say it's Facebook nation, and Facebook is already the fifth largest nation in the world.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. It used to be that the U.S. could mobilize and change people's perceptions, and today
Hmm.
it's the internet slash social media that can revise people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And I,
And in that perspective, how do you, what's your view on, well, the information sharing from users to Facebook, to Google, to all the major companies? That people are paying with their information, all combination is shared.
I think we're right now in the sticking our toe in the water stage where
Hmm.
we're all in the business of my casting. So
Yeah.
you share
Okay.
something with me, I consume it. If I think you're great, I'll come back and
Yeah.
consume more of it. I'm not going to pay for it yet.
No.
But I'm also not going to pay the New York Times, contrary to what they may think. I'm not going to pay the
No, I'm
BBC.
afraid so.
So
Yeah.
I'm only
Yeah.
going to pay myself. And everybody else can get lost. And I think
Yeah.
we're at that stage right now where I think we don't value
Hmm.
information creation. We value curation, and we think we're the best curators alive, and other people we trust are going to be as good, and
Yeah.
those are going to be our trusted advisors.
Hmm. Okay. Well, what else is coming up?
I think there's going to be a great deal of emphasis on wellness and health for the over
Hmm.
60s and then the over 80s, because I think we're going to
Yeah.
really start to see life where people are going to have to live much, much longer in a semi well state.
Yeah.
And semi wellness means a lot of expense to government, a lot of expense to corporations, a lot of expense to
Yep.
ourselves. But if you're alive today and you're over the age of 21, you're more likely to live to 104 than not. And I think that we don't have any systems or structures in place to fund these things.
No.
So I think there's going to be a big emphasis on how do we do the best possible job of funding and
Yep.
practically living out to be semi-well for a long, long time.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's the graying Western society, mainly the Western, and we are also in an interesting period of time. I think the youngsters, the screenagers, well, they're used to have internet and connections all the time since they were born, and the older generation, like me, um, well, it's sort of separating what I
Well, I
feel.
mean, I would actually argue that there used to be a first world and a second world and a third world. Really, it's the haves and the have-nots really come down to technology and social know-how.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because the second largest group online in the U.S. right now is actually 70 plus. Because the retirees have engaged and they're dating
Yeah.
online, they're playing
They got a
cards
lot of
online, they're
time.
doing a lot of genealogy online, they're doing memorabilia online. So that group is terribly engaged. So one of the things, the phenomena that's going on is my grandparent as best friend,
Yeah.
the BFF grandma. So it's not necessarily age based per se, but there's huge generational
Yep.
divides. Because one thing is that young people don't believe in privacy. They believe
Hmm.
privacy
No,
is a mirage
they're
and it's
used to
something
it.
the
Yeah.
rest of us are just indulging ourselves. The privacy is something you keep in your heart.
Hmm.
So they don't even understand a privacy debate. How dare governments waste their time talking about something so stupid? Privacy's been dead for 30 years. Get
Yeah.
over yourself.
Now it only becomes visible.
And they really believe that
Yeah.
governments and Germans are the only people left talking about privacy. How can you both be so dumb? And,
Yeah.
I mean, I've recently given a presentation to universities, and they looked at me, are you really that stupid? You think privacy is still an issue?
Yeah.
It's been dead for 10
Over. Yeah.
years. And if you don't believe it, wait till the next time your bank notifies you that they've compromised your credit
Yeah.
cards. And that night I got home, and sure enough, I was compromised by my bank, who informed me,
Yeah.
oh,
Of course.
it was their own error. Sorry. They're doing the
Yeah.
best they can.
Yeah.
And it's sort of true. There is no privacy. If I try hard enough, I can
Hmm.
find out the value of your house. I can find out the state of your marriage. I can find out the state of any kind of criminal record you have. I can find out your tax rate. There isn't a lot of ways to protect one's
Hmm.
soul except for by
Yeah.
staying. And you can't stay off the information grid
Hmm.
because if you want electricity, you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's an interesting insight, and to this channel, a lot of entrepreneurs, Dutch entrepreneurs mainly, are watching as well, and we'll have a meeting later on today. You get some pragmatic tips for them, or hey, take a closer look to when most of them are exporting and started in the IT business and trying to get into other sectors.
Oh, so, one of the big observations that I have right now is hyper local.
Hyper local.
Is the
Okay.
new global. So
Hmm.
global was the big thing that all of
Yeah.
us chased after. I mean, I moved to this country because
Yeah.
American multinationals believed that global was everything in the early 90s. Today it's exactly the opposite. We believe hyperlocal is the future. If I can stake out 5 kilometers and
Yeah.
own the minds, the hearts, and the wallets in that 5 kilometers, I'm going to be a tycoon if
Yeah.
I can replicate that
Within.
again and again and again. So if you think about the AOL patch model, or the Metro model. And so Kinnevik started Metro out of Sweden.
Hmm.
AOL Patch was a startup in the U.S. that America Online has purchased. Those models for media, I think, are the future, where it's very much grounded in as far as you let a kid drive a skateboard.
Hmm.
I mean, you're not talking about even as far as you take your car on a summer
Yeah.
outing.
Yeah.
So I think hyper local for these entrepreneurs, they stop thinking about overseas and
Yeah.
this and that, start thinking about how do you mine the very robust terrain right underneath your nose.
Hmm. Okay. Well, you've just heard, and I also aware, especially at the entrepreneurs, not at the youngsters and the graying people, but the working class, they don't have time to catch up fast enough with the social media and all the new developments, just because they're so operational oriented.
You know, I would actually make the argument that the great thing about social media is there's nothing to catch up on. I would say that while I had to learn the digital space in the
Of
90s, I
course.
don't have to learn anything right now, because right now it's a question of you simply answer the same question to the whole world: what are you doing?
Yeah.
I say my 80-something-year-old father can be on Facebook, can be on Twitter, because he's all day long he's telling people how he feels and what he's doing. And that's what he lives
Already.
for.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and if you think about it, it was really, social media was invented for the geriatric side. It was invented for the older people who are very, very comfortable talking about themselves in limited bites.
Hmm.
If you, I say that the one thing that we have to all learn how to do is write in 140 characters or less,
Yeah.
and
That's
figure
a
out how to
challenge.
come up with a hashtag, with a pound hashtag that's so unique that somebody wants to hear more.
Hmm.
And that really is the new art and science of what creativity is about. Is
Okay.
how do you sell yourself in 140 characters?
Well, that's great. Well, I think for this conversation, we'll use the hashtag Marian Salzman, and I'm sure that'll work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.